Thanks very much, Konstantinos. I'll try and keep it a bit briefer and also have a bit of passion and emotion and speak about some of the battles. So I've been asked to speak here today about the European market and regulatory developments. We've heard about the legal developments happening in the European Union. What I aim to look at is the trends currently playing out across the continent and what we could see in Greece as well. I'm essentially serving up the appetizers for the main courses later, the halloumi starter for the moussaka of the following panels, if you will. So at the macro level, the slow and often uneven economic recovery in the European Union is still having a pronounced effect on the industry. Land-based casinos and horse race betting were among the worst affected, particularly here in Greece, while online gambling and high-stakes slot machines have by and large withstood the worst of Europe's recessions and even grown over that period in many EU countries. To put it another way, convenience gambling on mobile computers and on the high street has tended to fare better than destination gambling at racecourse tracks or casinos. The signs are there that Greece is now coming out the other side of its own economic nosedive. The European Commission forecasts Greece's GDP will grow 0.6% this year and 2.9% in 2015, albeit from a much lower base after the devastation of the last 6 years. As you can see on the slide, this has taken its toll on the gambling sector, down 38% since 2009. OPAP ended its own revenue freefall last year after 12 straight quarters of decline. The Greek gambling behemoth posted its first quarter of revenue growth in Q3 last year and has continued to grow year on year since then. That's before a full ramp-up of two products, online gambling and video lottery terminals, or VLTs, that have grown so strongly elsewhere in Europe. Online Stahima was, of course, launched in time for the World Cup, although it's got off to a slow start. It's more Roy Hodgson from England than Joachim Low from Germany. While OPAP now has the technical standards it needs to install some of its allocation of 16,500 VLTs before the end of the year, both products were first acquired by OPAP almost exactly 3 years ago to the day, on September 30th, 2011, when Greece was under intense pressure from the Troika to raise extra funds. But Greece is not alone in seeing delays to gambling regulations first formulated during the worst of the sovereign debt crisis. Many reforms that were intended to raise extra tax funds are still playing out in EU member states. Portugal, Ireland, Cyprus, the Netherlands, the UK all spring to mind. Gambling changes tend to take time to go through parliaments because of their political sensitivities, and legal challenges from operators, as we heard from Philippe, often sent to the European Court of Justice on points of EU law, also have a habit of delaying changes for years. Online gambling, in the absence of any EU harmonized directive, is where most of the upheaval is occurring across Europe. My main focus today will be on online and high-stake gaming machines, since these are the two most contentious products being launched and regulated in Greece. So the trends that I'll be fleshing out are online gambling, the shift to local licensing with land-based firms the early winners, high-stake machines, rapid revenue growth but mounting political backlash, casinos stagnant or in decline until the economy improves, and lotteries, jackpot fatigue for the national lottery draws. Briefly, a few words about gambling compliance. We're the leading provider of independent business intelligence to the global gambling industry, specializing in legal, regulatory, political, and market data. Our products include a daily news service, data and forecasting, bespoke research, and over 150 regularly updated jurisdictional reports. I've been invited to speak today because our independent and impartial analysis has made us a go-to resource for governments in the industry. So to start with online gambling, Greece has a clash of two of the most common regulatory models seen in other EU countries. It's the biggest battle currently underway here in Greece. It has a licensing model in the form of 24 transitional licensees and plans from the Hellenic Gaming Commission to open a new tender for some online products. But through OPAP, it also has claims to a monopoly model, particularly for online sports betting. Greece has ongoing legal challenges from online operators and an uncertain tax environment for online gambling, which is a narrative that we're seeing elsewhere in Europe. As you can see from the slide and the map on the right, more than a dozen European countries are considering online gambling reforms this year. As political pressure and stubbornly high government deficits continue to drive overhauls of the sector, analysis by Gambling Compliance shows that 4 countries have plans to issue licenses this year for online gambling, while a further 10 or 12, depending on how you define it, have put their current legislation under review and could progress with reforms in the next 12 months. The UK and Germany, two of the largest European online gambling markets, are planning to issue online licenses this year. Whether they do manage to do so depends on the outcome of well-funded legal challenges from online operators. Political pressure is also forcing reform, whether it's the change to a right-wing coalition government in Norway or the infringement cases that we heard Philippe talk about from the European Commission. Sweden comes to mind here. Cyprus, Poland, and Lithuania have all notified legislation to the European Commission aiming to tackle some of the criticisms from Michel Barnier and his team. With Commissioner appointees being grilled by MEPs this week, it seemed worth mentioning the legacy that Mr. Barnier will be leaving behind. In some senses, there's more cooperation between regulators now than ever before, as you can see from the table. But there's still resistance for a completely united European Union on online gambling. And of course, there are the infringement cases that Monsieur Barnier leaves behind as well. Whoever takes charge, whether he's looking after water or gambling or whatever he's doing, he or she will be doing, this is one of the questions that he'll be facing on online gambling, is what to do with the 7 infringement cases that Mr. Barnier opened, and also what to do with countries like Greece that have come under intense scrutiny from the European Commission. So one outcome of this array of local regulations is what Italy's online regulator, Francesco Rodano, has called jurisdictional shopping. The idea that operators are picking and choosing which market they target, not Italy and Spain, but Italy or Spain, because they don't have the marketing budget, the fees and taxes to target both. As a result, some countries have failed to attract as many operators as they'd like, particularly in Eastern Europe. I'm thinking of Bulgaria, Romania, Czech Republic, and Serbia, none of which have more than 10 operators licensed there, despite setting themselves up with a regulatory and tax model that many would find attractive. For operators, the demise of this .com model, no longer being able to set up WilliamHill.com and target countries all over the world, means that you have to end up exiting some markets and focusing on core jurisdictions. Betfair, for example, pulled back this year from Russia and Portugal after already withdrawing from Greece. BWIN Party is another example, although their hand was forced here in Greece by ISP blocking and the threat of criminal enforcement. The shift to regulated markets is a move that investors generally seem to approve of, since those markets are valued more highly, but it can also dent profits if those markets don't grow quickly enough. So we're seeing operators, some of whom use suppliers like Playtech, as targeting Asian markets to make up for a lack of growth in Europe. And I mentioned Playtech not to have a dig at them, but because they're often a bellwether for what European companies are up to in the online gambling sector. And their Asia revenues increased 72% in the first half of the year, way above analyst expectations. More than any country, the changes in the UK, which last year was Europe's largest online gambling market, at least regulated online gambling market, with estimated revenue of 2.3 billion, have the potential to reshape the sector. It's an incredibly crowded market. More than 160 companies applied last month for transitional licenses for when the point-of-consumption regime comes into effect later this year, of course assuming that a challenge from operators based in Gibraltar is unsuccessful. What most analysts predict will happen when the point-of-consumption licensing comes in, and even more importantly, a 15% tax at the point of consumption, is that land-based operators with significant economies of scale will benefit the most. So Gambling Compliance's breakdown here of UK online market share, which we released this week, shows William Hill as the market leader last year with 15%. Paddy Power, another land-based betting operator, is also in the top 5 with 8%. The trend of land-based firms taking leadership positions is more pronounced in Denmark. Former Danish monopoly Danske Spil is the clear leader with a third of the online gambling market and more than 50% of online sports betting. In France, too, retail horse race betting monopoly PMU and sports betting monopoly FDJ are dominant in their respective online segments. In each case, the state-backed firms are drawing on a large custard database, strong brand recognition, which is further helped by a large retail estate, and in some cases, better acclimatization to the local tax regime. However, you can see that the other 3 companies in the top 5 are online specialists, so Bet365, Betfair, and Gamesys in the UK. What we're seeing there is that online companies can still carve out a leading position through better odds, marketing, low-cost, tax-efficient businesses that are based offshore. As I said, with Bet365, Betfair, and Gamesys. And in Italy, William Hill and Paddy Power have broken into the online betting top 5, despite not opening any shops there, through aggressive marketing spend, savvy use of mobile, and through offering a wide range of betting markets. As you can see in this slide here, OPAP's odds are often less attractive to operators, to customers, than some of their online rivals, who are offering better returns to players. Largely, I would assume, because of the tax benefits of being based offshore, but also not having to go through the similar regulations. Price is just one area that's holding OPAP back as it looks to compete with offshore rivals. I want to move now on to video lottery terminals. What the UK-Italy slide shows here is how online gambling has outperformed other sectors, but so too have gaming machines, maybe with the exception of the final year in Italy there, which was a slight drop, albeit from a very high base. High-stake gaming machines installed outside of casinos have enjoyed tremendous revenue growth in some of Europe's largest gambling markets in the last 3 years. I'm thinking here of machines like fixed-odd betting terminals known as FOBTs in British betting shops. These machines, they allow maximum stakes of £100 and prizes up to £500. They now account for more than half of bookmakers' retail revenue and a disproportionate amount of their profit. Without them, thousands of shops run by the likes of William Hill, Ladbrokes, Gala Coral, Paddy Power, and independent bookmakers would be loss-making. And we're also seeing UK casinos installing FOBTs to attract a growing number of customers who have grown up playing on FOBTs in betting shops and who want a similar experience when they go into a casino, despite the fact casinos can offer machines with much higher jackpots. But perhaps the even better parallel with Greece is video lottery terminals in Italy. The Greek population's gambling expenditure, as Konstantinos mentioned earlier, has historically been considered one of the highest in the world, probably behind China, but very much up there. However, the expansion of regulated slot machines has transformed Italy into Europe's largest regulated gambling market. The slide shows you the similarities in gambling spend between Italy and Greece. It shows how gamblers spent the most on slots and VLTs last year. That's an enormous €185 per adult in Italy on that, and that compares to about £45 on FOBTs in the UK. And you can see there that it dramatically goes down for casinos, horse racing, and internet gambling. These machines in Italy, the VLTs, have a stake of 50 euro cents and a payout of €5,000 and a jackpot that can reach all the way up to €500,000. And they now account for almost half of all slot machine turnover outside of casinos in Italy. However, what this has led to is the political backlash that I mentioned earlier. You can see in Italy, but not just in Italy, in the UK and Germany as well, that local authorities and opposition parties are reacting badly to the growth of these high-stakes slot machines and also their visibility on the high street. Several cities in the more affluent north of Italy have imposed restrictions on opening hours, locations, and the number of VLTs and AWPs in a bid to curb the industry. You can also see it in the UK, where the opposition Labour Party has promised to give local councils the powers to revoke and refuse betting shop licences, and with it have better control over the number of FOBTs on their high streets. That's on top of the coalition government in the UK already consulting on plans to make it harder to open new shops and for extra limits on stakes above £50. In Germany, as I mentioned, the 2012 Interstate Gambling Treaty, signed by all 16 regions, seeks closing times, minimum distances between arcades, bans on external advertising, and a range of other restrictions on high-stakes slot machines. The market last year was worth €4.37 billion in revenue, and Paul Gauselman, the chairman of the Gauselman Group, which is the main player there, has warned that up to 80% of that industry could be wiped out by 2017 if the treaty comes into full effect. Another way to bring tighter control on these machines, and one that's a measure here in Greece, is through player cards. It's a hot topic right now, and one that OPAP will be struggling with or grappling with when the VLT sector opens. Figures released last month in Sweden show how the cards can instantly hit the bottom line of machine operators. Revenue from Swedish monopoly Svenska Spel's VLTs dropped 30% immediately after the cards were introduced this June. They're meant to fight fraud and allow players to exclude themselves from all kinds of gambling if they feel they have a problem, but the revenue impact has been immediate, and Svenska Spel believes it could last for 12 to 18 months. Player cards that track player behavior may be more realistic in Nordic countries where people seem more likely to go along with government directions if they benefit society. In Italy, government officials drew up plans for player cards. They're gathering dust in the face of strong opposition from the sector. And likewise, UK betting operators have resisted mandatory player cards, although they are coming under pressure to hand over more data from loyalty cards. Anonymity is crucial in many of these gambling environments, and I think that this is a key trend that we'll see playing out in Greece when the VLT market opens. Let me move on to, that just shows you the size of the Italian VLT market there. And that was the UK closing the gap, with casinos. So what does this rapid growth of online gambling and high-stakes slot machines mean for other sectors? I think this first chart, which shows you how FOBTs, so the betting machines found in bookmakers, have gradually caught up with machines in casinos. And this next one, which shows you the cannibalization of land-based casino revenue in Italy by online casino operators, is striking. And then really they speak for themselves. And perhaps they suggest that the argument that online and land-based can be mutually beneficial, perhaps it doesn't quite work out like that, as suggested in this chart. So under the pressure from online gambling and slot machines, land-based casinos are finding it difficult to return to growth in Europe. The straitened economy in many European countries seems to be hitting casinos particularly hard. Greece's 9 casinos were the worst affected last year, with revenue down 10%. The fall has been painfully dramatic. In the 1990s, Greece boasted 3 out of 4 of Europe's largest casino properties, with extraordinary levels of turnover and profit. The 2008 global economic crisis, which seriously affected the debt-laden Greek economy, has hollowed out the casino sector, as personal disposable incomes have contracted. The vast majority of Greece's casino customers come from Greece itself, so austerity measures here have had a big impact. And often there's a leakage over the border into Macedonia with the border casinos in Doran and Zhevzhelia. If you look at this picture for European casinos, the UK is one of the only countries to see growth, and that's driven almost solely by international VIP visitors coming into London's high-end casinos. The others also have specific reasons. Hungary's 3 casinos, so the very positive chart on the left there, is almost solely because Hungary banned slot machines outside of casinos. So the 3 casinos in Hungary saw a huge benefit there, while Lithuania and Estonia have benefited from fast-growing economic growth in the Baltic states. Conscious that I want to wrap this up, I'll move on to the last sector, which is lottery. We've seen various trends there. There's a shift towards convenience, so lotteries selling tickets on mobile rather than as part of a weekly shop. Popularity of nest egg lotteries, so that's something like Santa Casa's nest egg, where they will give you a prize of €2,000 a month for 12 years rather than an enormous jackpot one-off payment. However, the most striking is a decline in sales for traditional national lottery draws, a potential indication maybe of jackpot fatigue. Of the 15 European lotteries in that slide to have released product-specific figures for 2013, 12 have reported a decline in absolute draw-based sales versus 7 across the same group in 2012. Annual reviews published this summer by lottery operators in Switzerland, the Netherlands, Ireland, the UK, and Slovenia have followed an established continental theme of number lotteries, so that's the traditional lottery draws, underperforming higher payout products such as instant win games, scratch cards, VLTs, and sports betting. The latest batch of lotteries to publish 2013 results have tended to report year-on-year declines in overall sales, but those operators which have remained in positive growth territory are seeing their net revenues pressured by a transition in player activity away from the margin-friendly draw games. As you can see in the sales data from lotteries that are part of the Euro jackpot draw, and I've listed them all there, you can see that the pan-European product is cannibalizing some of the more traditional national lottery draws, with only Germany's Deutsche Lotto and Toto Block having reported meaningful growth in draw-based turnover in 2013. At the beginning of the year, Germany's 16 state lotteries reported a 53% increase in Euro jackpot sales to turnover to 493 million in 2013, while growth for its other products were hindered by illegal online gambling and slot machines. Which I think brings us full circle, brings us back to what I was saying at the beginning. I hope that it's been helpful, and in the next panel we're going to be hearing more about traditional forms of gambling, the pressure they're coming under from new and dynamic forms of gambling, mobile, social, and potentially gambling as an export product for Greece. I hope this has all built up your appetite for the rest of today's sessions, and I will thank you again for listening to my speech today. Thank you.